Hello, everybody. I'd like to tell you a story. This one is called Shadows in the Mirror. There was once a woman who lived by herself in a quaint house in the country. Her husband passed away about 5 years back, and she was planning on moving soon. One day, while packing up some of her husband's things, she noticed that the temperature dropped really low. She walked out into the hall and went down to check the thermostat. When she got there, it showed no difference in temperature. She tapped it. There was no change. She thought about it, but figured that it must be broken. She decided that she would call someone the next day to fix it. But when she passed the mirror on the wall on her way back, she thought she saw a movement of shadows in the reflection, and then the temperature returned to normal. And she looked back at the mirror again. There was nothing there. She shrugged and went back to packing. A couple of days later, a shiver passed over her and she noticed the temperature was dropping again. Again, the woman went to the thermostat. It showed no change. Tapped it. Nothing. She remembered that she'd forgotten to call someone to repair it. She promised herself that she would call after her show on TV that she had been watching. When she passed the mirror again, she saw a movement of shadows. She stopped. In the reflection, she saw a shadow, nothing but a shadow, slightly translucent, but visible. The shape was indescribable. It changed shape, like water flowing, about the size of a tall person. It stepped out from the wall behind the woman. When she turned round to face it, there was nothing there. Now she was scared. She began to tremble. Slowly, she turned back to the mirror. The figure was still there, and closer. She screamed out, "Help!" but no one came. Closer and closer. It came. A few weeks later, a friend of the woman stopped by to say hi. She knocked and knocked, but there was no answer at the door. She hadn't realized how quickly time had passed, and that she hadn't heard from her friend. She was worried, of course, so she called the police. The next day, a police officer came out to investigate, but he found nothing but a few empty boxes, and the TV was on. There was a small investigation, and eventually, after nothing was found, it was put down as an unsolved case. The house was soon cleared out, and eventually put out on the market for sale. For many years that house was empty, even though it was beautiful. But what with all the stories going round about it, I guess it put a lot of people off. But one day, a small family consisting of a mother and father and a daughter moved from the city into the house. All was well. Until one day, the temperature dropped. The daughter noticed it first, so she went to her parents and asked them what had happened. They said they didn't know. They went to the thermostat to check. It showed no change. He peered at it closer, gave it a few knocks. No. No change in temperature. They decided to call someone. There must be something wrong with it. The daughter went back to playing with her dolls in her room. Had she have looked up into her mirror, she would have seen the shadow peeking from behind the reflection of her bed. But just then her parents came in to tell her that someone was coming the next day to fix the thermostat, and she'll have to deal with it for a while. But when they finished saying this, the temperature went back to normal. Never mind, the parents said, and closed the door, and everyone carried on. A few weeks later, the girl was brushing her hair at the time in front of her mirror, and the temperature dropped. And as she looked up, she saw a shadow behind the reflection, and it started to creep towards her. She screamed. Her parents came in asking what happened. She told them, but they didn't believe her. She thought it was her imagination. But it happened again. And again. Not on the same day. It was spaced out, but it kept happening. Then every time she screamed and her parents came in, and she told them, but they just did not believe her. She tried so hard to make them believe her. They took her to a psychologist to get her help. The psychologist didn't believe her either. And after a few sessions, when she came home, she believed it was all a figment of her imagination. It must be, right? Things like that only happen in the movie. She probably would have kept believing that, except about 2 years later, the temperature dropped once again. The girl was by herself because her parents had gone to the theatre and left her home alone. Since she was 14.5 years old, they felt she was more than capable of being home without any adults. She was experimenting with makeup at the time in front of her mother's mirror. And as she painted the line of scarlet lipstick across her lips, she froze, and she stared in terror as that thing, the shadow, crept out from behind the bed. She trembled, but she didn't call out. She couldn't call out, but she knew no one would come. All she could do was sit and stare at the shadow in the mirror. And now, as done before, the thing came closer, closer, and closer. When the parents came home, they searched. There was no answer. They found that they had no one to come home to. Of course, they were upset. They searched. They put out posters. They did everything they could to find their daughter. And at first, the police thought she might have been a runaway, but there was no reason she should have been. And they exhausted all avenues of investigation, even television articles. Nothing. The girl was never seen again. The police report said it's another unsolved case. In the house. It's funny, but Even to this day, as big and as beautiful as that house is, it still stands empty.